Army saw their 3-year bowl streak come to an end in 2019. Can Jeff Monken get the Knights back to the postseason to begin a new streak in 2020? Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, the best kept secret in all of college football. Today, bringing you our 2020 Army Black Knights college football predictions. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos, as well as check out everything down in the description below, where you can receive exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com, as well as follow us on all of our social media pages over on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So you take a look at Army's 2019 season. Yes, the longest bowl streak in program history came to an end as Army went just 5-8. But man, they had the talent to have a very special season in 2019, losing 4 games by just 1 possession, 2 of which came against very good teams. A heartbreaker in overtime to Michigan at the Big House, and then a game that came down to the final seconds against an 11-win Air Force team. 4 games decided by 1 possession, but Army ultimately went 5-8. And now Jeff Monken enters year 7 with yet another talented team, one that could certainly get back to the postseason after just missing out last year. You take a look at their numbers. You take a look at their returning starters. Offensively, they returned 6, led by their quarterback in Jabari Laws. Now, he was not the full-time starter last year, but he did get 5 starts for the Black Knights and had 484 rushing yards. In 5 starts, he was the 4th leading rusher on the team by season's end. The key for him is going to be staying healthy. He's battled some injuries as of late. If he's not healthy, Army's offense is really going to struggle. They do have their fullback, Sanden McCoy, who led the team last year with 10 touchdowns and 576 rushing yards. And their offensive line, and an offense like this that's solely based on the run, solely based on the option, is so important. And their offensive line is extremely senior-led. And that's going to be huge for an Army team that was 3rd nationally with the run, 297.2 rushing yards per game for the Black Knights last year. And that's to be expected. Everybody knows what Army's going to run, yet no one knows how to stop it. You look at the defense. 7 starters are back from 2019, a unit that only allowed 23 points per game last year, so not too bad for the Black Knights. They do lose Cole Christensen. They do lose their cornerback, Elijah Riley. So they lose some experience. They lose some key starters and leaders from last year's squad. But they're pretty much set across the board, guys. They've got Ed Reese-Patterson along the defensive line. They've got Arik Smith at linebacker. And they've got Javari Bordeaux at cornerback. So all 3 major groups in the defense, they've got some experience and some leadership there. That leads me to believe this Army defense can be very stout yet again in 2020. We take a look at their schedule, guys. Can Jeff Monken, who is 40-36, entering his 7th year at West Point, can he get them back to the postseason? Well, they're going to start off strong. They're going to get a win over Bucknell. We're going to give them that win. I feel very confident about that. I think this is a great game for Army to kind of get their feet wet for Jabari Laws, to work out any problems that he's having, to kind of build some chemistry with this offense. Yes, he started 5 games, but now he's the full-time starter. Let's get used to it. Same said for the defense. They then come on the road to take on Rice. And this is a Rice team, guys, that gave Army a fight in last year's season opener. A Rice team that only fell 14-7 to the Knights. And that was a game that was way closer than people expected. Now you look at Rice, guys, like Army last year, they went 3-9 but had 4 losses by 1 possession. They ended their season on a 3-game winning streak. So they're carrying some momentum into this season. And they have 10 returning starters on the defensive side of the ball, a defense that only allowed 138.3 rushing yards per game last year. So you've got some momentum. You've got some experience. You've got a pretty stout running defense. And I'm leaning towards the Owls in this one. They've got some home field advantage on their side as well. So in a mini upset here, a Rice team that is improving and headed in the right direction gets a win over a solid Army team, which drops the Black Knights to 1-1, which is disappointing. Because I think a lot of people were hoping to see an undefeated matchup in Week 4, September 26th, against Oklahoma. But even if Army were to lose this game, lose to the Rise, even if they were to lose to Bucknell 0-2, it doesn't matter because this is going to be one of the biggest home games in Army history. At Michie Stadium, Oklahoma is visiting for the first time since 1946. Oklahoma is visiting West Point for the first time since 1946. And guys, this is not a shoe-in victory for the Sooners, let me tell you. You cannot automatically put down a W for Oklahoma. Because a few years ago, Army almost came into Norman and beat them, losing by 7 points in overtime. Last year, Army went to the Big House, lost by 3 points in overtime to Michigan. All right, this is not an Army team that's a pushover. They've got home field advantage and a week of rest on their side. It's an Oklahoma team that's led by a brand new quarterback in Spencer Rattler. Lincoln Riley no longer can benefit from a transfer QB, a veteran QB, and they've got a wide receiver core that's pretty depleted right now, at least early on in the season. It's a major, major trap game for the Sooners. And I think they struggle. I think they struggle for 3/4 of this game. But in the end, Oklahoma and Alex Grinch's defense steps up just slightly. Spencer Rattler makes just enough plays to show that he can be something special with Lincoln Riley in this offense. And the Sooners pull one out just barely at Michie Stadium. What's going to be an electric atmosphere. The Army, unfortunately, losing at home to the Sooners to drop to 1-2. And we've actually got them dropping to 1-3 here, losing to Miami, Ohio. This is a great team led by Chuck Martin, guys. This is a Red Hawks team that could be one of the best in the MAC. They actually won the MAC last year, guys. They surprisingly won the MAC, and now they returned 16 starters, including their quarterback in Brett Gabbert. Yes, the brother of Blaine Gabbert. So this is a very good Red Hawks team out of the MAC. Army has to travel there. They might be hung over after a very disappointing loss and heartbreaking loss to Oklahoma. We saw that last year. Army really struggled for the rest of the season, really, after that heartbreaker to Michigan. Hopefully it will not be the same for this Oklahoma loss, but we do have them losing the week after. But we have them bouncing back with a win over Princeton. So they've got a win over Princeton here, guys. They're now 2-3. And yes, we know that none of these teams that they have defeated so far are FBS opponents. They beat Bucknell, they beat Princeton. They're still 2-3. They get their first win over an FBS opponent right after that. 2 consecutive wins here. They beat Eastern Michigan. They're up to 3-3. The Eagles, 6-7 last year, but lose their star quarterback in Mike Glass III. They allowed 194.2 rushing yards per game last year. Look, if you allow a lot of rushing yards, I don't care how many starters you have coming back on defense, you probably will struggle a little bit against this Army offense. And I think Eastern Michigan does just that at home for Army. They're back up to 500. They get another home game here against Buffalo, so they get a long string of home games here after the bye week. But we have them losing to the Bulls. We have them losing to Buffalo, and here is why. The Bulls went 8-5 last year. Very, very good record. Snagged a bowl win over Charlotte. They returned 7 on their offense. That includes their quarterback and Kyle Van Treese. That also includes their star running back and Jarrett Patterson, who rushed for nearly 1,800 yards last year and 19 touchdowns. He was one of the better players in all of college football, and you didn't even know his name because he's in the MAC. But he rushed for nearly 1,800 yards, 19 touchdowns, and their defense, guys, returned 7 from a unit that only gave up 21.3 points per game. And here's that key number, was 4th in the nation in rushing defense, allowing just 94.2 rushing yards per game. I think Buffalo has too much offensive firepower, and I think their defense is able to shut down Army's option. When you do that, Army can't win a game solely through the air like other teams can. I think they drop this game in a close one at home. They get their bye week on Halloween, another perfect time. Look, Army is nailing it with these bye weeks, guys. They're getting them before their biggest games of the season. Right before Oklahoma, right before Air Force, and of course, naturally, right before Navy on December 12th. They come into this game against Air Force, guys, an Air Force team that went 11-2 last year, and a team that beat Army 17-13. We mentioned that was one of the 4 one-possession losses that Army suffered last year in that game, coming down to the wire. The key for Air Force this year, though, is they return Donald Hammond. They don't have him. I'm giving Army a win. But they do return Donald Hammond. And they do return their running back in Caden Rimsberg. This is an Air Force team that, like Army, is going to run the exact same offense, which is why it's probably going to be relatively close. But I think Troy Calhoun's doing something special with his Falcons squad. They have a chance to win double-digit wins yet again. And I think Army, even though with a weaker rest, even though it's at home, falls to Air Force and falls to Tulane as well. Kind of another one of those games here where maybe after an emotional, heartbreaking loss against a very good team, maybe they're a tad bit hungover. They fall to a Tulane team that's extremely strong on the run game, had over 243 rushing yards per game last year. And remember, Army gave up over 163 rushing yards per game last year. So you've got some elite running teams here like Buffalo and Air Force and Tulane going up against a relatively weak Army rushing defense. Doesn't line up for a successful win. Doesn't line up for success when you look at those numbers. Fall to Tulane. But we haven't bouncing back though. Wins against UMass, wins against UConn. Two teams in the independent. Yes, they're both on the road, but yes, they are absolutely horrendous. You start with UMass. Army beat them 63-7 last year, guys. UMass was last in the nation in every defensive category except passing defense, where they ranked 109th. And that doesn't even matter to Army because they're really not going to pass that much in this game anyways. Same can be said for UConn. They are now a member of the Independents, moving over from the American Athletic to the Independents, but they gave up 40.5 points per game last year and over 220 rushing yards per game last year as well. Like a couple of these other teams, they returned 10 starters defensively. That's great. Fantastic. Return 10. Like Rice, but it's still UConn, guys. They've still got a long ways to go. Still have a long ways to go, even though they get to host this game. So right here, they've got 5 wins. Bye week. Playing Navy. Big-time rivalry game. Anything can happen. We know the Army-Navy game, you throw everything out the window, guys. You know that. Rivalry games, we throw records out the window. Same thing can be said right here. We see some classic matchups in years past between these two squads. Last year was not one of them. Navy defeated the Black Knights 31-7. They had an 11-2 year. Navy had an 11-2 season in 2019. They do lose their star quarterback, though, in Malcolm Perry. That's huge for Army because he ran all over them last year. It was embarrassing how bad Navy and Malcolm Perry ran all over the Black Knights defense. But even though they lose him, even though they lose a couple other key starters, their defense returns 6 starters. This is a Navy team that might not win 11 games again, but they're still going to contend in the American Athletic Conference, and they are again going to defeat Army in Philadelphia. Army takes a loss here, meaning that we have them in 2020 going 5-7. 5-7, missing out on the bowl game, guys, and not by 1 game, but by 2, but because they play Bucknell and they play Princeton. When you have 2 teams outside of the FBS on your schedule, you have to win 7 games, not 6. Army would have to do just that. So they get 2 easy wins, but only win 3 outside of that. For the second straight year, Jeff Monken and the Black Knights are not going bowling. That's very disappointing. It's very disappointing. Schedule somewhat favorable, but at the same time, very, very difficult. They get their big games at home. Oklahoma, Buffalo, Air Force. They win a few of those, they're going bowling, a chance to start a brand new streak. But for now, we just don't see it for the Black Knights. We see some highlights, but we see way too many lowlights in 2020. But mark my words, Army will be back, and be back with a vengeance, I should add, in 2021. If there's anything I've learned over the past few years, it is to trust in Jeff Monken. He's lasted this long at West Point. He's done phenomenal things so far in West Point. Army fans, just give him time and continue to be patient. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos, as well as check out everything down in the description below. Exclusive content over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, as well as exclusive content on our social media pages over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.